All right, man, peace. So for those of you brothers who follow NBA basketball for long enough, you know that there are always very good to borderline great teams that just cannot get over the hump. Whether it be the 1980s Milwaukee Bucks or the early 90s New York Knicks or the early 2000s Sacramento Kings or the early 2010s Indiana Pacers, there's always been teams that were either very good or borderline great who just could not get over the hump. And of course, this year is going to be a referendum on the Houston Rockets experiment, featuring Mr. James Harden, or as I call him, James Hardhead, Chris Paul, and Carmelo Anthony. So they sat down to give their perspective, their testimony on what they expect from themselves this season. So of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
We continue our training camp tip-off. The Houston Rockets, oh so close a year ago, maybe an injury away from getting to the finals. But the big two, now a big three. They all sit down with Allie LaForce at Media Day.
What was your initial reaction when you heard the news that Melo was joining the team?
I was excited, honestly. I think, not like only Melo, but I think all of us have something to prove.
Well, first off, brother, stop lying. You were not excited. That's why you said I was excited, honestly. If you were actually excited, you would have just said, I was excited. For you to say, I was excited, honestly, that's you trying to cover up for the fact that you were not excited at all. Or to cover up for the notion, the understanding that you know that across the NBA media, across the internet, social media, etc., people know that Carmelo Anthony is not going to get you guys over any hump. They also know it's pretty much starting to become uniformly or universally accepted that Carmelo Anthony is way past his prime and that he's pretty much going to retire a player who most likely will never win a championship. I mean, you never know. The Rockets may go on a magic carpet ride this season, but I do expect for them to take a downturn from last year. I think that last year was their year. I don't think that they're going to be anywhere near as good on defense, and I also think that they're going to be less proficient on offense. So James Harden knows, he knows that the only reason why Carmelo is even there is because he's good friends with CP3. And I'm pretty sure that CP3 had to sit James Harden down and go over things with him to get his blessing to bring on Carmelo. Carmelo to me is like that cousin that you see every once in a while at the family barbecue, but you don't want to hang out with him because if you hang out with him, you might get caught up in some dumb shit.
And so it fits in what we're doing. He has some things to get off his chest.
Yes, brother, he has a lot of shit to get off his chest. Like a layer of fat. The man got man titties.
Me and Chris and the rest of the guys are willing to help him out. And so...
No, you guys are not willing to help him out. You guys all have a common goal. Because what all you guys have in common is that you pretty much experienced everything except for a championship. So from that perspective, it is a decent match. I just don't think that Carmelo's going to bring enough to the table to help them. Not to beat Golden State. I'm not even quite sure if they're going to be good enough to beat a fully healthy Celtics team. And maybe even the Lakers may give them some trouble. I think that the Rockets will be the second best team in the West. But if, for some unforeseen reason, they were to get to the NBA Finals, I don't even think that they would be good enough to beat the Celtics. But, I mean, we'll find out. We'll see. There are going to be some very interesting matchups in the regular season that will allow us to gauge exactly how good many of these teams are. I'm looking forward to watching how Toronto matches up with many of the better teams in both the East and the West. I'm looking forward to seeing how well Toronto matches up against many of the better teams in both the Eastern and Western Conference.
I think all of us, we're going into this season with one goal, and whatever that takes.
I was excited, to have a guy that you're so close with, to never have played on a team with him.
Brother, let's be for real. There's 4 guys involved in you guys' little clique. That little NBA Luciferian Masonic witchcraft clique that you're in. Yourself, LeBron, Carmelo, and D. Wade. And of the 4 of you guys, 2 of you have won championships already. And one of the main reasons why the first 2 of you have won championships is because they combined together. They both won 3 each, and 2 of the 3 they won playing together. So you guys are trying to mimic that near the end of your careers. So you're hoping that you'll have some of the same synergy that LeBron had with D. Wade. That's what you're hoping for, bro.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're teammates now. We've been friends, but now we're teammates. And at the end of the day, my hunger
hunger and my drive, we have a similar drive when it comes to what we want.
Well, we know that you're hungry, brother. You've been 20 pounds overweight for the last 10 years. So we know damn well that you have a hunger. It's just a matter of what you have a hunger for. At the end of the day, I know a lot of people might think that I come down hard on Melo. It's not that. It's that this brother does not understand what his place is in the NBA. What do I mean by that? Had he understood what he was, which is a great supplementary piece as opposed to the alpha on a team, he probably could have won 2 or 3 championships already. Because he's not Magic Johnson. He's not Larry Bird. He's not Jordan. He's not LeBron. Who he is the Scottie Pippen. He's the Kevin McHale. He's the James Worthy. And had he understood that when he was still in his prime, he could have had 2 or 3 championships already. And that's what has always held him back, his inordinate self-image. That, to me, is what has always held him back. And as we're going to see in this interview, he still has a very, very strange and perverse understanding of what his station is on this team.
We want. And he want the same thing I want. And we both know that we have a hunger. We have an attention to detail right now. We have a very high level of focus.
So you have an attention to detail right now. So what have you had for the first 15 years in your career, brother? If you have a high attention to detail right now. Because I watched you for 5 years on the New York Knicks. You did not have a high attention to detail on the defensive end. I know that for a fact. I mean, once again, you couldn't guard a statue.
Which is to go out there and then do what we got to do and put the work in. Because it's not going to happen easily, but we have to put the work in to get that done. Well, one thing about it, Melo played for Coach D'Antoni in New York.
New York, yeah.
Of course. Who could forget that? That dumpster fire.
Yeah.
But I'm sure things that we do are a little different than when he was there, but that's what camp is for. You know, we don't have all the answers right now, and I think that's why we got to build. I think it's funny how last year at this time, all the questions were, who's going to have the ball? You, James.
Right.
I agree with that, brother, and that's a great point. Because prior to last season, I was not a believer in that union of you and James Harden. I thought that there were not going to be enough basketballs, and both of you brothers proved me wrong. So kudos to the both of you. I'm just not quite sure if adding Carmelo Anthony as the third wheel is going to take you over the hump. I just don't see that. But if you brothers prove me wrong, to be quite honest with you, I'll be happy about that. All right? I'll be sincerely happy about that because I think that that will be a great capstone per se, pun intended, because all these dudes are Luciferians, but it'll be a nice capstone on you guys' career if you were able to win a championship this year.
You know what I mean? And we don't get those questions no more, but we had to build, you know,
right.
Same thing.
Who's going to have the ball, you, James, or Melo?
I don't know, whoever can score.
Yeah, exactly. And when you have unselfish players and teammates who just want to win, that's helpful, and you have to have that in the system.
Exactly. You just have to come in and play. You know, that's the thing about Coach. You know, Coach just says, go out there and play.
Of course he says just go out there and play. That's why he's a good regular season coach and he's a terrible playoff coach. Because when you get to the playoffs, you have to be able to make adjustments. And all D'Antoni says is, well, just play harder.
He puts the onus on us. Obviously, if we're not playing the right way, he gonna get in our, but we just got to figure it out. It was good for us meaning myself and D'Antoni, to just have a real conversation. And
well, you had the chance to have a real conversation with him back when he coached the Knicks, brother. What happened back then?
You know, I was younger, he was younger.
Now, did you hear that dumb shit he just said? Carmelo said, I was younger, he was younger. Mike D'Antoni got to be damn near 60 years old if he ain't 60 years old already. Back when he coached the Knicks 6-7 years ago, there was no difference in him in regards to maturation. So the difference is with you. But once again, Carmelo Anthony is showing that he's unable to take accountability for his poor decision making and his inordinate self-image. And it's a great thing to be confident. But when you're inordinately confident, what they call arrogant, because pretty much all arrogance is confidence that's undeserved. So this is what has held him back, and he still is suffering from this. And that is why he was unable to perform his role on the OKC Thunder. And I suspect as this season goes along, he's going to have more problems with D'Antoni should he be prompted to ride the bench.
New York, been caused a lot of tension itself and a lot of stresses.
Now you try and blame New York. Look, I'm going to give Carmelo Anthony this much credit during his time period with the Knicks while D'Antoni was there. They had the Jeremy Lin situation where Jeremy Lin pretty much came out of nowhere. And not only Mike D'Antoni and not just the New York media and not even just the United States media, but the international media, they were pushing so hard for Jeremy Lin to all of a sudden be crowned as the best player in the NBA. Why is that? Of course, because he was a non-black and because he was Asian. The NBA saw the opportunity to tap into the Asian markets by promoting Jeremy Lin. He could have been one of the more lucrative stars that they had in the NBA that was non-black since Yao Ming. And they just took that and ran with that because the guy had 7 or 8 good games in a row. And this occurred while Carmelo Anthony was on the bench. I believe that he was out due to injury. And when he came back, he was marginalized to the point where they made Jeremy Lin the alpha on that team. And as we've seen in the aftermath of Jeremy Lin being on the Knicks, he's barely an NBA player. He's a serviceable bench player. So that was an indignity that was done to Carmelo Anthony, who was a player of very high prominence at that time, that I'm pretty sure was the last nail in the coffin in his relationship with Mike D'Antoni. And I believe that it led to Mike D'Antoni being fired, because that entire Jeremy Lin experiment blew up in everybody's faces. And of course, Carmelo was not going to go anywhere because he was the box office attraction with the New York Knicks at the time. And he was very close with James Dolan. And at that time, Mike D'Antoni was trying to install the system that he ran with the Phoenix Suns, led by Steve Nash. So he was trying to mimic the success that he had in Phoenix, and he understood from the jump that Carmelo Anthony was not a player who was going to be plugged into that system properly. And I said that even before they made that trade, that was not going to be a good trade for the Knicks, because Carmelo Anthony was a black hole. He's always been a black hole. The only difference is that back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, he was a black hole who would shoot about 45-46% and average about 25-26 a game. Now he's a black hole who's going to shoot in the low 40 percentile and, probably score around 18 or 19 points a game with the Rockets. We'll see what happens. But I just don't see how their relationship is going to work, because I do think that Mike D'Antoni still has a bit of bad blood for Carmelo Anthony, a player that basically forced him out of his head coaching position with the Knicks, and a player who I still believe Mike D'Antoni does not like his style of play at all.
Stress itself.
It's one of the toughest media markets.
Yeah,
and that's for sure.
Of course. But for the most part, it was just good to have that dialogue with him and kind of get that out the way first, and then now we can just focus on winning the championship. That's it.
We feel like we're more than capable of doing it. Obviously, we got to put ourselves in that position like we did, getting that number 1 seed. That's the goal for the regular season. And just keep chopping away every.
It's going to be very interesting to see who gets the number 1 seed in each conference, because I think that Golden State is smart enough to understand that we could have gotten knocked out of the playoffs last year against these Rockets. And we were very fortunate to win Game 7 on the road with no Chris Paul there. I've always stated that had Andre Iguodala not gotten hurt, they probably would have won the series in 5 games. The Golden State Warriors would have, in my view. But they were very fortunate after Iguodala went down, who is their best defender and is probably the smartest player on the basketball court for them in crunch time moments. They were very, very fortunate that Chris Paul went down in Game 6. But if you're Golden State, you can't just cruise like you did down the course of last season. They're going to have to look at this up-and-coming regular season as we have to win 65-plus games. That should be the benchmark for Golden State.
Every game throughout the regular season, making sure we're getting better, making sure our communication is getting better, and everybody's comfortable and feeling good. That's the biggest part.
I think the only thing to prove at this point in my career is just go out there and win. As far as anything else,
Carmelo Anthony, brother, you act like you've been to the finals 7 times like Jerry West and lost, and now you finally got that 1 championship, and you're going to be 1-8 or 1-7 in the finals, whatever Jerry West was. I think he was 1-8 in the finals. You've never even been to the finals. You've been to 1 conference finals in 15 years, bro. You haven't even been close. Stop trying to act like you're this player. You're like a Kevin Garnett or somebody who has been a dominant overall force in the NBA, and you just need that 1 ring.
I think I've proven that over 15 over.
No, you haven't proven shit, brother. You haven't proven shit.
Over 15 years, but.
And I know a lot of his fans right now, they're gonna be getting mad. Why does this brother hate Carmelo? I don't hate Carmelo. I'm just a realist. I'm a realist. And I can already see that Carmelo Anthony is not going to fully understand his role. He's going to get upset when he gets benched in crucial moments. And he's going to start to be a distraction once he realizes that he cannot do what they need him to do.
But winning right now is the most important thing for myself.
Thank you, Ali. You know, normally in the four major sports, guys, when a team is on the precipice, they get to that edge, they bring everybody back, make one or two small tweaks, and say, okay, now we're ready. It's not kind of what happened here, Zeke, because without a Chris Paul injury, they may have very well won the championship. But now they're very different. Not only...
And I think that that's haunting them, too. Because once again, you have teams like that who feel like we're this close and we're going to bring all the guys back next year and make another run and we're going to get over the hump. That's why when I opened the video, I brought up certain teams like the early 90s Knicks. People forget they got to the Eastern Conference semis in 92. They lost to the Bulls in 7. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals in 93. They lost to the Bulls in 6. In 94, they got all the way to the finals. They lost to the Rockets in 7. So, of course, they're thinking 95, we're going to win the whole thing. They end up getting knocked out by the Pacers, I believe, in the Eastern Conference semis. And Pat Riley, he knew it was over. He didn't even make an announcement that he was leaving. The man sent a fax. So, if the Rockets were to make it to the playoffs this year and go out in the second round, do not be surprised if Daryl Morey tries to clean house. Do not be shocked.
Not only bring in Melo, but we didn't talk about there, lose Ariza, you lose some of that defense and that structure. What about the different changes with the Rockets?
Well, they made changes, but so did Golden State.
Ding.
Golden State added Cousins, but also Golden State, in my opinion, I think they're hungrier. And I think they may have the player in the league who has the most to prove and probably wants to prove the most in Kevin Durant. I think
that Golden State is starting to embrace more and more the understanding that they're viewed as being so dominant, so talented, that they're never going to get any of the credit or the positive esteem that they were receiving back in 2015 and 2016. So their attitude is they're looking on the horizon and they're seeing possible rivals. They can see Toronto being a possible rival, even though they probably want to see them on the floor first. They know that Boston's going to be probably their biggest threat. They know that the Rockets are looking for some get back. They know that OKC is going to be a serious problem on the defensive end should Roberson stay healthy. They know that LeBron James and that whole experiment, that's going to be a big sideshow. And there are a bunch of goons on the LA Lakers that could give them a problem when they do match up with them. And, of course, there's the potentiality of the great Anthony Davis being traded to the Lakers or to the Celtics. They have to watch out for those things as well. So these are the things that they're looking at. That's how a king has to think. Who are the potential rivals that may try to cast me off my throne? So that's where their mindset is right now. But once again, the Rockets, I'm sure they view them as their number one threat in the Western Conference.
I think Kevin Durant right now is coming back saying, I want to establish myself as the best player in the league. I'm the best player in the league. I'm the MVP of the league. And when I look at the Houston Rockets right now, Kevin Durant is saying, okay, who's guarding me?
Well, he was saying that last year. I believe he's been saying that all 11 years he's been in the NBA.
There's no Trevor Ariza, right? Who's guarding me? So you may have...
That's going to be funny as hell, seeing Carmelo Anthony try to guard Kevin Durant.
You may have Paul. You may have Carmelo Anthony. But they're a little older now. These aren't guys that are getting together when they're 28 and 29 or 27. You know, they're 35, 34. You know, they're going to be, 34, 33, soon to be 35, 30.
Well, Carmelo's going to be 34, but he's trapped in a 45-year-old body.
34. This is an older bunch. This is an older team. And they're going up against a Golden State team that will be well-oiled, well-tuned, with a lot to prove. So I like the Melo addition. I just don't think it's enough to overcome Golden State.
And not just, guys, Griff, not only do they lose.
And once again, do not be shocked. Do not be shocked if the Rockets get knocked out of the playoffs before they get to Golden State. Wouldn't shock me at all. Once again, they lost a game in the playoffs to Minnesota, and Minnesota had no idea what they were doing on the basketball floor. They lost a game to the Utah Jazz. And Utah, they had no idea what they were doing out there, and they were missing Ricky Rubio. So, would not shock me to see the Rockets go down to the Lakers in the playoffs. I'm not going to quite say OKC, but it wouldn't shock me to see the Lakers knock the Rockets out of the playoffs. I wouldn't bet on it, but it wouldn't shock me.
Only did they lose Ariza and Bob Mute, who I know you thought, we talked about it when we did the playoffs together, had a lot of value. You lose, there's only one PJ Tucker, who I know was a major factor for this team a year ago. If it's all about winning a championship, are they better suited to win with this group than they were a year ago?
So I don't like the fit of their pieces for a few reasons, and one of them is something you said about Golden State. They've got continuity in Golden State. Every time you radically change what you're about in pursuit of beating Golden State, you actually get further away. It is.
In other words, Carmelo Anthony is not good enough offensively to replace what Mbah Moute and what Trevor Ariza brought on the defensive end. That's what David Griffin is saying in a roundabout way. And a lot of people, once again, Carmelo Anthony has a very huge fan base, a very strong cult of personality out there. But just listen to what David Griffin states in this little roundtable discussion here. He's going to let you know how general managers view Carmelo Anthony. They view him in the same way that I do.
As much as people want to talk about the fact that Kevin Durant joined a 73-win team, the nucleus of Steph, Clay, and Draymond has been together for a long time.
And beyond that, Kevin Durant fit in perfectly with that team and with their overall offensive scheme because of the diversity of things that he can do and the fact that he can play extremely well without the basketball in his hands. He does not need to monopolize the ball like a Russell Westbrook, a James Harden, or a LeBron James.
They built trust. They learned how to win together. They got through big moments together. And that Houston team was perched right on the precipice of winning the Western Conference and maybe a title. And because of the injury to CP, they lost that opportunity. So by losing your defensive identity of those versatile pieces, I think they get significantly further away. Not only who guards Kevin Durant, but who covers for everyone else. The more pieces you have with versatility, you can do more to cover for the fact that CP's 33 years old, and that was a hamstring issue. That's muscle.
And beyond that, CP3 is almost like a miniature LeBron James. When he's put in highly pressurized situations, a lot of times he can come through, but also he oftentimes suffers from some type of body malfunction. He'll tear a hamstring, he'll hurt a ligament, he'll have cramps. Because of the anxiety, his body gets tight.
So, Isaiah, you know this really well. As soon as you start to have those, it's not like they go away.
Oh, wait. Grant know it well, too.
Well,
now, Isaiah Thomas, why are you going to bring up Grant Hill's injury history like that? Like, come on.
I thought he was making
as a point guard, as a point guard, right? So I think what it really means for them is they're going to have to do far more work throughout the process on the defensive side of the ball than they needed to before.
And beyond that, not only are they going to have to do far more work on the defensive side, they're going to have to do it with players that don't really want to have to play hard-nosed defense. Once again, Trevor Ariza, Mbah Moute, and of course PJ Tucker, who's still there. They were their dogs on defense. Chris Paul still plays great defense, but it's easier to play great defense when you know that you have dogs behind you. They actually made James Harden look like somebody who wanted to play defense.
And don't forget, and this is a big deal, they lost Jeff Bzdelik also, who was really the brains behind their defensive approach. So I think that team actually may have taken a somewhat significant step backward.
I want to add.
Not only that, once again, as David Griffin is saying, when he states they've taken a significant step backward, what is he really saying? Not only does he think that they're not going to really challenge Golden State like they did last year, but they could possibly get knocked out of the playoffs by a team other than Golden State.
I want to ask Grant something about what, and I thought it was a good question Ali asked. Melo says he doesn't have anything to prove. It's hard for me from the outside, and he's a competitor, to believe that. I'll ask both of you.
Well, the reason why Melo has to say that he has nothing to prove is because he has to continue to perpetuate this facade that he's on the level of Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and LeBron James, and the only thing that's separating him from them is a championship. He wants to act like he's not in a pressurized situation, and to be quite frank with you, he's really not. Because even if they win a championship, he's not going to get the credit that he would have had he led a team to the championship. And that gets me back to my point. Because of the fact that he has such a low self-awareness, He's not able to make a real self-assessment. He's not able to understand that he would have been a great second banana in his prime. Right now, he's at best a third banana at the very best. And one can certainly make the case that he's more of a Bob McAdoo type. He should be coming off the bench, assisting and giving important minutes, maybe 20, 25 minutes a game, and giving some pep off the bench. Instead, because of his pride, he has to be a starter. And all these things are just going to hold him back.
Because here's a guy whose minutes were cut down. He wasn't being used.
No, sir. His minutes were cut down and he was not being used because with the minutes he got, he wasn't doing shit. And I will say this about Carmelo. It's difficult to play with Westbrook. But Westbrook oftentimes was giving him the ball in his spot and Melo still wasn't doing anything with it.
He wasn't really a factor at all for that team a year ago. Everybody seems like, Grant, that OKC's better without him. Does he have something to prove, regardless of whether he's going to the Hall of Fame already or not?
Well, I think every athlete has something to prove. It's just a matter of...
Well, every athlete with self-awareness, every person with self-awareness understands that life is all about setting goals for yourself. Therefore, you always have something to prove to yourself. So anybody who says that they have nothing to prove, they're either delusional or idiotic. Your whole life, you have things to prove. You have to constantly be creating things for you to prove to yourself. If you don't have those goals, you're not going to get anything accomplished.
It's just a matter of what that is in the case of Carmelo Anthony. He was probably humbled, knocked back a bit last year. It was probably the most difficult in terms of production on the court season he's had in his career.
I'm not quite sure if he was humbled, but if he wasn't, he should have been.
But yeah, I mean, he's going to want to come in and show that he can coexist, that he can thrive, that he can get. But the problem is his skill set. It just doesn't complement what this team needs. What made this team special, we can focus on the three-point shooting and the scoring, but 100% it was the improvement on the defensive end. And their ability to shut teams down, switch, they caused Golden State to really struggle to score against that defense. It was because of P.J. Tucker and Capella, but we talked about Trevor Ariza, Bamute, all those guys together defensively. That to me was what really stood out about that team last year. And now you lose a defender, you bring in a Melo who's not a 3-and-D guy, and he's not able to play at the level.
He's definitely not a 3-and-D guy. I mean, he's a no 3, no D guy. Man, don't make threes and he don't D up on anybody.
The level he played at, 5 or 6 years ago, where he could really be sensational on the offensive end. He's an ISO player. They were one of the highest teams with in terms of ISO ball, 15% of their offense last year. Now you're bringing another guy who's an ISO guy. So the chemistry on the offensive end is going to be off a bit. Mike D'Antoni does not like ISO ball.
That's why he never liked Melo. That's why he never liked Melo. See, people don't understand this, and they say, well, the Rockets are playing a lot of ISO ball right now. The reason why D'Antoni allows it is because of what Chris Paul and James Harden can do. Yes, they're ISO ball players, but they're players that can also create. I've had Carmelo Anthony fans come on my channel and get in the comments, oh, what are you talking about? Carmelo rebounds well, he passes well. No, he doesn't. Carmelo does not pass well, and he does not rebound well. Even at his peak, he was never a great rebounder, and he definitely was never a great passer. The last time Melo was a decent to above average passer was the 1 year at Syracuse. The man has not been a good passer in the NBA. He's a terrible passer now. But the reason why, once again, just getting back to the point, the reason why Mike D'Antoni has changed his system around or contorted it to suit James Harden and CP3 is because they're players that have been able to adapt to the modern style of NBA. They can pull up for three, they can pull up in the mid-range, they can finish at the cup, they can make their free throws. When you have players that can do that, then you know what? I'll change up my system a little bit. What can Melo do? I mean, what can he do? If he's being guarded by a big loafing 4-man, he can pump fake and maybe beat him to the basket. We already know he's going to hold the ball for 15 seconds, do his old man YMCA shit, and he's only going to hit that jump shot maybe 3 out of 10 times, man.
At all, and the defense took a huge step back. So, it's going to be, they're talented, and they're talented enough to get to the conference finals, but I don't know if they can push Golden State like they did last year. And I worry about their durability. Mm-hmm. Chris Paul has been known to be hurt, got hurt at the absolute wrong time last year. Can he go through another season? Last year he was hurt in and out at different times, and they're not as good without Chris Paul in the lineup.
The one thing you do know for sure, Mike D'Antoni knows what Olympic Melo looks like and how to make that.
I say this all the time. All this Olympic Melo shit, that stuff is just a myth. They're going against European teams, playing international rules, and they're giving Carmelo Anthony pretty much what he gets in those summertime workouts. Wide open 17-foot jump shots.
Make that successful, because he was really.
Even though I will say this, I think that Chris Paul is going to make Carmelo look better than he's looked the last 2 or 3 years.
Was really heading that offense when Melo was incredibly good for USAB. I think he'll use that experience, but the most important thing is Melo comes into this knowing they're not a big three. He needs to play whatever role he needs to play for them to win. It's not about that anymore. And I thought in OKC, he thought they were a big three still.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, David Griffin. In other words, sit your broke down ass on the bench, play your little 20 minutes a game, and do what the coach needs from you. That's it.
It's not about that anymore. And I thought in OKC, he thought they were a big three still. And I think Melo.
There's no doubt about that.
Melo needs to evolve there.
One of the big questions.
Melo needs to evolve, i.e. he needs to accept that he's not a top 50 player in the NBA anymore. He's just not. Carmelo Anthony is not a top 50 player in the NBA anymore. One could probably make the case that just going by the style of play today, he might not even be top 100.
The big questions now is if they do step back at all, because you say Western Conference Final, who would even step in? The Wolves are kind of in disarray right now, right? There's no Kawhi on the Spurs. Could they be better with DeMar? OKC now doesn't.
The Spurs are going to be a dark horse. Not to do any real damage, but outside of the Golden State Warriors, I don't know of a team that really wants to see the San Antonio Spurs in the playoffs in the first round. They're going to be a very, very dangerous matchup. I guarantee you there were many teams that were happy that the Golden State Warriors drew the San Antonio Spurs in last year's playoffs, and that's with no Kawhi, no DeMar DeRozan. Because they're very, very dangerous. And if you're facing a San Antonio Spurs team in the first round with a fully healthy DeMar DeRozan, so on and so forth, they're going to be a problem for a lot of teams.
Now doesn't have Melo. Are they good enough? It's a little bit wide open now.
Utah.
Utah's there too. Yeah.
I like Utah's situation.
I like Utah too. I'm just not sure if they have enough scoring.
I like their stability. They have a budding superstar in terms of Mitchell. They play team ball. They seem to be on the right path. They got a great coach in Snyder, and don't sleep on Denver.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you know what? I do like Denver as a dark horse to make the playoffs, but let me say this about Utah. Watch out for Utah being one of those teams that gets into a lot of skirmishes, especially with that boy that they drafted out of Duke, who's always tripping people. Watch for them to be a team that's always getting into some type of skirmish.
Yeah.
Right? Don't sleep on Denver. Don't be surprised if Denver jumps up and have a great season.
You forgot the
Denver should have made the playoffs last year.
mild, medium, and hot Wild Wings jerseys. They're X Factor. We've got more.
But anyway, that's basically it on the Houston Rockets and their prognostication for the up-and-coming season. I think that the roof for them, of course, would be to win the championship, but I expect them to go out in the conference finals against Golden State, probably in 5 games. But you know what? I may amend that as the season goes along, depending on how they look. So peace.